to quote Ash from Alien, final word, or last word, I guess is what he says before they unplug him. I forgot that I put in this Helen Caldicott. I adore Helen Caldicott. I think she's such a fine human being. I had a chance to meet her. I'm amazed that this woman hasn't won the Nobel Prize. She should have. She just has been. She's a medical doctor, and she practices as a medical doctor. She's an Australian for years, and then she became an anti-nuclear activist. And this is in the early 80s. And by the time we get to, well, let's see, I met her maybe 10 years ago. She's still going. And she is a formidable force. She's funny. She's smart. She's traveled all over the world. She met Reagan. It was very interesting when I was sitting with her and I asked her, we talked about it. And she said in 81, they were talking. And she basically said to him, you can stop the war. And Reagan at this point had early onset Alzheimer's, and they knew it. And not only did they keep him in power, but he actually was elected to a second term in 84. And by that time, it was kind of an open secret that he had Alzheimer's. So the Americans elected. That's why it's like Trump, like, yeah, he's crazy. It's bad. But we've seen bad before. I mean, what's worse, Trump or Reagan? Now, it's interesting that when Reagan was in power, he sat down at one point with Gorbachev in 86, and the aides that were with them, they were going to talk about nuclear strategic arms reduction talks, the so-called START talks. There were three rounds of arms reduction talks: SALT 1 and 2, and the START talks. SALT is the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. So strategic arms here are nuclear weapons. And the agreement was that let's start backing down from the number of weapons that we have. Okay. And I'll talk about that. I'll show you some slides of the number of weapons there were in the planet. In the early 80s, there was a massive number of weapons. It's just astonishing. They've been dismantled. They talk about dismantlement of nuclear weapons. Anyway, so Gorbachev and Reagan so they had these strategic arms limitation talks, 1 and 2, SALT 1 and 2. And then they had the START talks. And the START talks were strategic arms reduction talks. So they weren't just limiting them, they were actually beginning to reduce nuclear weapons. In 1986, Gorbachev and Reagan sat down and they began to talk about how few nuclear weapons did they really need, because they were like, what, maybe we can reduce our nuclear arsenals. And Reagan, by this time, was essentially sort of operating like a child. He no longer was really ideological, because his brain was suffering from Alzheimer's. So he was like, well, why don't we just get rid of nuclear weapons? And Gorbachev was like, yeah, let's do it, Ronnie. Let's go. And they took notes. There were notes about this meeting. And in a half an hour, they were down to like, well, maybe we only need 6 weapons each. And it was astonishing. The aides could not keep up. They were like, holy Jesus. We've never seen anything like this. I mean, these are mature men, these aides I'm talking about. They're not like 21-year-olds. So just because they're aides doesn't mean that they're, they're 20 or interns. It's like they're in their 60s. And these are people who have lived in the nuclear world all their lives. And this is what this is what they live and breathe. And they're like, oh my God, we've never seen anything like this. Can we make this happen? And they were like, Mr. President, we don't have any way to make this, and Reagan was like, no, I think we can do this, don't we? Can't we, Gorby? And Gorbachev was like, yeah, we absolutely, Ronnie, we can do it. Holy Jesus. So that was the closest we ever got, ironically, right in the middle of the Second Cold War, at the depths of the Second Cold War. And the two leaders were talking about peace. Well, Caldicott is one of the people who pushed for this. And she pushed and pushed and pushed. And that's why I just want you to see this piece this is from If You Love This Planet. And what I love about this is partly how kick-ass she is about, it's like, we're not taking no for an answer. That's part of it. And part of it is how touched the audience is. Because at the time, you could still get in touch with college audiences with this kind of thing. Now, I don't think so. Anyway, see what you think.
Lots of things you can do. You're next to the SAC Air Base here. Close it down. Don't take no for an answer. Don't take no for an answer. It must be done. It must be done. These weapons must be eradicated from the face of the planet bilaterally, multilaterally. Then people will say, what about the Russians? You can't trust the Russians. Remember that right through Vietnam and Cambodia, Russia and America negotiated SALT I. Quite a good treaty. The superpowers have signed 17 treaties on nuclear weapons. Neither side have ever violated them. Russia's signed SALT II. America hasn't. Why not? Why not? Because, say the senators, America wants to maintain its superiority. What does that mean? We're on a terminally ill planet, you know that. And we are about to destroy ourselves. And when a patient comes into the emergency room who's terminally ill, we don't say, well, that patient's terminally ill, take them straight to the mortuary. We put the patient in the intensive care unit, and we delicately balance the electrolytes, and we stabilize the cardiac function, and we eradicate the infecting organism, and occasionally the patient survives. And what I'm really saying to you is that if you love this planet, and I'm deeply in love with it, and you watch the spring come, and you watch the magnolias flower, and the wisteria come out, and you smell a rose, you will realize that you're going to have to change the priorities of your life if you love this planet.